Welcome to the Build to Scale podcast. I'm Reem Ben-Shar, your host, and today we have a special guest joining us, Qi Cao, founder and CEO at Chargeblast. Qi, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. Where are you located?
I'm sitting in our New York office right now, which is located in Midtown, 37th and 7th, so very central in Manhattan.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Qi, for joining us today. I appreciate you taking some time to share more about yourself, your company, Chargeblast, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. The listeners, I'm sure, are going to get great insights. So first of all, tell me more about yourself. Tell me more about your role at Chargeblast and a little bit about your background.
Sure. Like you said, I'm one of the founders and CEO of Chargeblast. We've been around for about a year and a half. And what we do is we help merchants and stores or subscription software companies that are primarily B2C basically get their chargeback rate down to 0%. And we've been able to help over 2,500 merchants in this last year and a half and protect over $2 billion in annual transaction volumes, leveraging our pre-dispute alerts. And it's saved a lot of businesses from being closed down just because they didn't realize the threshold for chargeback rates was so low. And in regards to my background, I'm originally from China, and I moved over to the U.S., to Minnesota when I was 5, specifically Rochester, Minnesota, where you may or may not know, that's where the Mayo Clinic is based. And because I was surrounded by the Mayo Clinic, I had a natural inclination towards biology. So I studied biology at Yale, but my heart was really in business. So I put the two together, and after graduating, I did a couple years in biopharma consulting. And then after that, I moved farther away from biology, and I did agriculture. I worked at an agriculture startup doing corporate development. I just wanted more skin in the game as opposed to, just consulting. I wanted equity. And what I realized was, look, even though I'm part of this startup, there's a lot of other decision makers. So I wanted to get closer to equity and ownership. So I worked at a hedge fund for a few years where you basically eat what you make. And I covered enterprise software and multi-industrials. But now I'm in fintech. So really goes to show you that I think general experience may be more important than domain expertise.
Absolutely. And I think it's fascinating to see someone like you have such a rich and diverse background. It must have been such an interesting journey getting to where you are today. Out of curiosity, is there a story or like a point that got you to say at some point, well, fintech is something that I want to dive into from maybe where you were in the hedge fund?
Never. It really didn't stem from my past work experience. It actually stemmed from just me generally knowing that I've wanted to have my own business. Throughout my whole life, I've ran small businesses starting in elementary school where I bought and resold trading cards. Middle school, I bought wholesale like soda and candy, and I resold those out of my locker. In college, I sold single-strand DNA ladders. And then after college, I had a semi-successful investing newsletter for biotech. So it's always been stuff that I've done on the side, and I knew that I wanted to do it full-time, but just never felt like it was the right moment. But I met my co-founder, Steven, and it was just the right time for, I think, both of us, and given our age, to take that leap. And we started first by working on a company that sold AI tools to students, and students charge back a lot. They don't necessarily have a lot of money to spend all the time, or they may be using their parents' credit cards, and the parents are just wondering, like, what is this? So there's a lot of chargebacks. So that's actually how we got into the chargeback space, because we were afraid of losing our Stripe account ourselves. And we were looking for good solutions to help prevent that. And there weren't really many good ones. So we started Chargeblast out of that need.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I'm sure, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, you knew you wanted to be a business owner, but you didn't know what that would look like. And now here you are, founder of a great company that's growing and that's really solving a big problem that a lot of merchants have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
Congrats.
Quite exciting.
This is really cool.
Thank you.
Great. So maybe we can dive a little bit more into what you're seeing as big trends in your space, right? I think the chargeback space is very important because we know the threshold is really low and there's such a high risk for companies to lose their payment processor, which I know for a fact, just from my experience with other business owners, can be detrimental to a business. So in your space, what are some trends you're seeing this year that are worth noting that you can share with us?
Right. So I think there's kind of three different trends. The first is the general payments ecosystem is becoming ever more protective of the consumer to the point where the consumer can actually leverage the system to get free items. So out of all the chargebacks that happen globally, which is over 250 million chargebacks in a year, about 70% of them are actually first party fraud. So whether that's they did it intentionally with malicious intent, or they just didn't understand what they purchased and they charge back. But 70% of it is actually just from the consumer, just not knowing what they bought or trying to take advantage of the system. And then the remainder is actual fraud, right? Like the fraud that you really want to be preventing. So we've seen that level of friendly fraud really grow and spread on social media, these hacks to get free products, et cetera. So it's been very painful for merchants, which has really driven a need to protect against chargebacks, which gets to my second point, which is there's been a transition from pre-authorization tools to post-authorization tools when it comes to payments. And what I mean by pre-auth and post-auth is before the transaction takes place, and post-auth is after the transaction takes place. So there's a lot of fraud tools that are pre-auth tools that basically help you screen out higher risk customers that could lead to a chargeback. Now, the issue with pre-auth tools is that they will block a lot of good transactions. We've seen merchants that will remove pre-auth tools and see a 5 to 10% lift in revenue just from doing so. And then there's tools like Chargeblast, which is post-auth. So we only protect against actual customer chargebacks. So our data stream only gets triggered when a customer clicks dispute on their app or calls your credit card company to file a dispute. So we only protect against actual chargebacks. And I think merchants are now getting smart and they're realizing, okay, why don't I prevent all the revenue blocking and just rely on Chargeblast to protect against chargebacks, which is fantastic. I think that's the right move when it comes to driving ROI and revenue. And the third trend is surrounding AI. And it's really just fintech companies leveraging AI and big data to better understand what to fight when it comes to chargebacks. And a lot of that is understanding, okay, this industry has a distribution of card networks that's different than this other industry. Like we spoke about prior to our call, airlines have more chargebacks typically from Amex because it's more of a travel card. So that needs to be accounted for because with all these schemes and issuers, there's different levels of win rates when it comes to fighting chargebacks. So by leveraging big data to get industry-specific as well as merchant-specific models, we're better able to inform merchants. You can fight this chargeback, you have a good chance of winning it, or maybe you shouldn't fight this one because you're probably not going to win it. It's going to take up an hour of your time gathering evidence.
That makes sense. Out of curiosity, who are the most ideal client for you? Like what kind of companies? Is it e-commerce, retailers? I know you mentioned airlines. Who are kind of the companies that really benefit the most from this kind of technology?
Yeah, mostly subscription software and subscription e-commerce products that are B2C. Because you can imagine a lot of customers charge back subscription products as they feel like, oh, I forgot to cancel it, or I have too many vitamins this month. I can't eat 2 bottles of vitamins, so I'm going to charge back one of them and get my money back, but keep the vitamins, right? So there's a lot in the subscription space that we deal with.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense because I figure the volume would be higher, right, of transactions. But I was curious about e-commerce makes perfect sense. But yeah, software, like recurring subscriptions as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely mind blowing that people would think I got charged again for this. I'll just file a chargeback. It's that's not the goal of a chargeback. The chargeback is when you don't know, when you get a transaction that appears and you realize it might be fraud or someone else that did it on your behalf and you're not aware of it. But consumers think of it so differently. It's interesting time to live in.
It really goes back to these protective measures for consumers. So if you think about a consumer that's considering a purchase and wants their money back, Reaching out to the merchant will take multiple steps, and the consumer immediately thinks the merchant doesn't want to give me back my money. However, when you file a chargeback, it's as easy as opening up your banking app, find the transaction, click dispute. That's it. And 90% of the time you get your money back. Merchant win rates are about 10%. So now you're a consumer, what option are you going to take? You're going to take the easier option with the higher chance of getting your money back. And you get to keep the product, right? So just the way the payment system has evolved to date really protects the consumer and almost incentivizes them to a degree to charge back rather than reach out to customer support with the merchant.
And from what I understand, it's not going to get better for merchants. This is the regulations are clearly leaning more against the merchant and protecting the consumer. So your product is probably going to be much more needed in the future.
Yeah, MasterCard estimated that within 3 years, that number, the 250 million chargebacks number globally, will become about 340 million. So that's a 13% compounded annual growth rate, right? Which is much higher than GDP growth rates across the globe. So it just goes to show you there's going to be more online payments, higher risk of chargebacks, and solutions like ours will become really necessary.
Absolutely. That's an interesting world. I feel like it's so niche, but it does have such a massive impact on anyone who's using a payment processor, which is 99% of companies. So that's a really interesting vertical.
Yeah. And for folks listening on this podcast and thinking about starting an online business, really get ahead of the problem before it becomes a problem. 99% of the merchants that approach us already have a chargeback rate above 1%. They're already under scrutiny with their payment processors or have already received a letter from Stripe, let's say, that they're going to get their account shut down. In those cases, saving an account using Chargeblast is somewhat of a coin toss, right? I would say we'd be able to save like 50 to 80%, right? But the thing is, if you set up Chargeblast even before you start processing, you have that insurance, right? We don't have any monthly minimums. We don't have any onboarding costs. It takes 10 minutes to enroll. It's incredibly easy. So why not set it up and just protect yourself against chargebacks? Because we only charge on a per chargeback basis, and you avoid the dispute fee from the processors. So it's a no-brainer to get it set up just to make sure that you have a viable business. Because like you said, you lose your processor, you don't take money, it takes a few weeks to set up a new processor. You have to share your transaction history with the new processor, and they see, okay, this person has a high chargeback rate. We're not going to let them process too much. It becomes a spiraling problem that's almost impossible to get out of when it comes to being a merchant. So it's really important to get well ahead of the chargebacks. I think my light shut off, but it's fine.
You're good. Absolutely. It's much more crucial to be preventative here than, act after the fact. Yep. But agreed, it can be detrimental to a lot of businesses. I've seen it happen personally to others, and definitely listen to Qi here. If you're looking to start a business and pick a payment processor, definitely watch out for the chargebacks. They can happen without even realizing. It's just, and it's unfortunate, but it's part of.
It's unfortunate. Founders are thinking about how to grow sales and margins. They're not thinking about chargebacks. I met way too many founders that are chargeback experts. They shouldn't be chargeback experts. They should be focused on running their business. We can handle the chargebacks.
That makes sense. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your company growth, because I know you mentioned you've had, started the company, did you say a year and a half ago?
Yep. That's right.
Very recent from what we see in terms of new companies. It does take much longer on average to build the user base that you've been building in such a short amount of time. Do you want to tell me a little bit more what growth looks like or has looked like for you in the past year and a half? Because I do think that's really impressive and listeners can maybe learn from you.
Sure. So we started off our growth engine just by running ads. And this is from our experience as a B2C merchant in the past. We ran a lot of ads. We used to spend over $200,000 a month on just ads, right, for our B2C business. And with that said, we're fully bootstrapped. So ad spend can be profitable. You just have to understand LTV to CAC, right? And that's it. Any B2C person will tell you that. Understand LTV to and you know whether your business is profitable, and you can ramp up ad spend based on that. So that's how we got started. However, more and more, we're actually increasingly seeing word of mouth deals come in because we focus on two pillars. It's very simple. And I think a lot of businesses can benefit just by focusing on these two pillars. We're in a space that has already been demonstrated as, a solution that needs to be provided. We're not incredibly innovative in that sense. But what we do really well is have really good integrated technology that makes it easy for a user to set up. Think about Stripe, think about Mercury. Stripe is just a processor. Mercury is just literally an online bank. They developed a front-end UI and their back-end is First Choice Financial or something like that. It's just UI, right? So having good UI and technology can make a whole lot of difference when it comes to customer experience. And then once you have acquired the customer support is incredibly important. Across our playing field, the average review that a competitor may see is like a 2 to 3 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot. But then you look at Chargeblast, we're at 4.6, 4.7 out of 5 stars. And it's really demonstrating our capabilities to go above and beyond for our clients, which drives word of mouth. So that's really important. It's the two key pillars, just good UI, good technology, and customer support. That's it.
Absolutely. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, when it comes to ads, what we're seeing and hearing from other founders, especially in the B2B spaces, ad cost is going up, which is, a normal thing. It's been going up for years now, every single year. So it's more and more expensive to acquire new customers. But there's been a lot of even changes in the way companies do marketing and acquire new customers. And even a lot of them are getting away from ads because it's not making sense in terms of the LTV not being high enough to cover the cost of acquisition of new clients. But you're bringing up a really good point, which is, have essentially a good product with a good UI and a great support so that clients are not only happy, but, they're going to give you good ratings and they're going to bring more customers. So it's a bit of a longer term game, but it's a great investment, and congrats on doing that, like being bootstrapped, because that's definitely also a rarity these days.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes to ads, like is your customer willing to pay for? Test out different price points, and that can completely change your LTV, right? Like, are you a subscription model right now, or are you not a subscription model? That could also change your LTV. And when your LTV changes, and even if your CAC stays the same, then you either become a profitable business or not. A lot can be just found in terms of optimization in your own business model, not necessarily in how you configure Google ads or TikTok ads or something like that.
Absolutely. It's a great point you're bringing. I think a lot of founders don't necessarily think about that and are more tunnel vision focused on ad performance. But that makes sense. In terms of maybe this year in your company, what are some maybe challenges you face that you can maybe speak on?
Yeah, our space is very competitive, and a lot has to do with pricing as well. So what we really have to focus on is how can we demonstrate our position to be incredibly valuable to merchants so we can take basically a premium on our product. Otherwise, it's going to be a race to the bottom, right? Especially since a lot of the data people source from the same place. So what we can do better is, like I said, technology and services to maintain a higher price point that people are willing to pay for. Stripe is very expensive as a processor, but it's incredibly easy to start and use. And there's a reason why people start with Stripe, right? And maybe stay with Stripe despite the higher price point.
So it's the value, the proposition that dictates the price. So yes, absolutely. Companies will pay more for something that's better. But yeah, competing on pricing solely is also pretty detrimental to any business. So that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's definitely a common challenge we're hearing across the board, especially with SaaS products, technology, companies having a strong messaging so that people understand the value of your product and understand what's actually not just the value, but the added value compared to other competitors. So that enables you to charge a higher price point. That premium is probably one of the biggest challenges we've seen so far this year, as in a lot of verticals, it's getting more and more competitive. So it kind of makes sense. Yeah. And then for next year, what are some big priorities or initiatives that are important for you as a founder?
Yeah, I mean, this year we really took the time to figure out our deal sources, right? Conferences, ad spend, word of mouth, partnerships, etc. So what we're doing next year is really doubling down on what has worked in the past when it comes to ROI and continuing our growth from there. And I think we're going to have a pretty great 2025. Fingers crossed, given our pipeline right now and our strategy moving forward.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are going to do great. You have a good product that you've shown tremendous growth in just a year and a half, which again, I'll say it again, it is impressive. We don't hear that often, so that's pretty amazing. But yeah, any maybe word of advice you would have to anybody who's listening to the podcast right now, who's really motivated about growing their business, either at early stage or maybe later stage of their business? What is like maybe one piece of advice you would have for them?
I'll actually give 3 pieces just because I think they're really core to success for all founders. Like, you need this aspect in order to grow. And the first one is being really honest with yourself. As a founder, sometimes you feel like you're in a position where you always have to be right. That's not the case, and that's going to be very detrimental to your company. So be open to feedback and be open for growth. That's going to do you incredible favors in the future. And the folks that work with you, they'll see you as a more honest leader, as opposed to trying to put everything on your back and trying to really push for your view just because you're in the leadership position. And then I think the second piece of advice is really leverage ads at the beginning. A lot of founders, they really want to just do like product hunts, organic growth, etc. Man, that is a really, really slow way to get product market fit validation. At some point, a company needs to scale with ads. That's just the nature of the game. So the faster you can demonstrate your ability to grow profitably with using ads, the faster you're going to grow, because then you just have to put fuel in the fire. And then the third piece of advice I would say is really be quantitative about what you do. A lot of folks, they don't look at the numbers. They think, okay, if I go to this conference, it's just for meeting people, networking with people. I don't necessarily have to close a deal. I'm not going to track how much I spent at the conference or what deals are associated with that conference. We track everything. So we know exactly which conferences to go to in 2025 that will drive ROI and which ones to avoid, right? It's all in the numbers. And if you treat a business like the number, like its numbers, it's kind of like my background in the hedge fund space. If you treat a business as a model, as a financial model almost, then you know exactly where to pull on the levers to make sure you are growing as fast as you can, as profitably as can, in the most optimized manner as possible. That's the only way to bootstrap it, right? Every dollar has to get to a place where it's going to generate the most ROI. You don't have a dollar to waste. So I think that those 3 are the key points I would say to aspiring founders.
Yeah, and they're absolutely great reminders, especially the ROI and knowing what you're getting back from every dollar invested. This is incredibly important. And sometimes we know there's a lot of things founders have to keep track of, and they're wearing a lot of hats, but ultimately, in order to grow, this is fundamental. So these are great reminders. Thank you so much, Qi.
Absolutely.
If anybody wants to connect with you or learn more about Chargeblast, what is the best way to do that?
Yep, I'm pretty active on X. So my handle is Qi like cheetah. My first name spelled QI, to help everyone know how to pronounce my name. And then on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active as well. So you can just search me up, Qi Cao, Chargeblast, and I should pop up.
Perfect.
And any founders that have any questions or advice, feel free to reach out. I'm always very open to hop on a call and provide advice.
Also, that's generous of you. Thank you for offering this. We'll have these linked in the description of this podcast episode, and make sure to go follow Qi on X and LinkedIn. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who may need to hear it. Thank you again, Qi. I appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for listening. Take care. I'll see you next time.